Hey there, friends. Welcome to Just the Gems. I'm Brandon, and I'm going to say something that might be a little controversial. I think that everybody deserves the chance to play classic JRPGs. I know. Please, have mercy on me for my bad takes. But I don't think that owning an old video game console should be a prerequisite for being able to play all of these fantastic games. I'm a physical collector, right? I have a room full of JRPGs and other games that I love. I really enjoy having physical media. But I fully acknowledge that the world is moving, slowly but steadily, away from that. Do I think there's going to be a giant PlayStation 5 collector's market in 20 years? No, I don't. But anyway, my point is that people should be able to play these games regardless of the status of their collection of physical media. With that in mind, I put together a list of the top 15 JRPGs that you can purchase right now, today, if you want, on Steam. That's right, your boy's got your back. Now before we begin, would you please do me a favor, hit that like button. Please subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. Thank you so much. So without any further ado, let's dive into it. Number 15, Shadow Madness. Now, look, I am not going to sit here and pretend that Shadow Madness is one of the all-time classic JRPGs. No, it's a little weird that it's on this list at all. But to be honest, the fact that it's so weird is kind of why it's on this list. I never would have imagined that Shadow Madness from the PlayStation 1 would ever be on Steam. Why? Was anybody asking for it? Maybe they were. I don't know. The point is, it's a little bit of an oddity, and it's something that you might want to check out. So Shadow Madness was produced by a bunch of X-Square employees, led by Ted Woolsey, a man whose name you would know if you paid attention to the translators of classic games like Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger. This was to be the big Western breakthrough JRPG. And more or less, I would say it did an admirable job of emulating the style and mechanics of a JRPG. We're talking turn-based, more or less active time battles, 3D characters on 2D backgrounds a la the Final Fantasy PlayStation games, a story about a bunch of orphans saving the world, like you'd expect. But overall, it wasn't a huge hit with critics, and I imagine with audiences either. We're looking at scores of like 6 out of 10. So, not the worst game you've ever played, but definitely not on the level of Final Fantasy, Chrono Trigger, things of that nature. Still, I wanted to put it on this list because, like I said, I was just shocked that it was there. You can go on Steam right now, and you can purchase Shadow Madness. That's nuts. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's get to the rest of the list. Number 14, Secret of Mana, the 3D remake. Now, if this was the original Secret of Mana that I was talking about, this would be significantly higher on the list. The 3D remake is good. Don't get me wrong. It's a well-done 3D adaptation of Secret of Mana. I say 3D with like a verbal question mark because it really is just the same game, Secret of Mana, same perspective, sort of a top-down 3/4 view, but it's in 3D, I guess, with polygons that are not nearly as charming or interesting to look at as the sprites. I feel like Trials of Mana did it a lot better. They kind of remade the game from the ground up and didn't stick to the exact formula that the Super Nintendo version of Trials of Mana used. Anyway, it's still worth your time, especially if you don't have any way of playing the original Secret of Mana. And the fact is, you can jump on Steam right now and pick up Secret of Mana. What a world we live in. It has a remixed soundtrack, but don't worry, you can switch it back to the original soundtrack at will, which I did immediately. Hiroki Kikuta, man, can do no wrong. So good. So good. This was also the game that confirmed to me the canon name of the main character is Randy? Randy. Oh, and the characters all talk in this one. I don't know. I could take it or leave it. I don't think the voice acting was terrible or anything, but yeah, you know, it's Secret of Mana at the end of the day, and you really can't go wrong with Secret of Mana. Number 13, Ni no Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch. Any Miyazaki fans in the house? Well, I don't think he worked on this at all, but it is definitely done in the style of the Studio Ghibli films. Studio Ghibli had a large hand in the creation of this game, and it really, really, really shows. It was developed by Level 5, master game designers, Studio Ghibli animation, just amazing. Joe Hisaishi? Am I saying his name right? I think I'm saying that right. Joe Hisaishi. Hisaishi Joe. Yes, I'm right. Joe Hisaishi did the music. In battles, you can control either your main human characters or their familiars. So this game has an element of Pokemon-style collect-them-all-ness to it. It's a really good, really charming game. This is, obviously not the oldest game on this list. This was a PlayStation 3 game. I think there was also, I want to say, a DS version? There was another version of the game, never came out over here. But Wrath of the White Witch was a PlayStation 3 game. So yeah, not the oldest, but it's getting up there in years. I don't know if you noticed that the PlayStation 3 is pretty old now. Highly recommend it. And as a bonus, its sequel, Ni no Kuni 2, is also on Steam, so check it out. Number 12, Atelier Rorona, The Alchemist of Arland DX. Here we have another PlayStation 3 entry. This is the DX version of the game, which comes with some bonus add-ons. I'm not super familiar with what's different between the two versions because this is the version that I played on PS3, so it's the one I would recommend. Anyway, you play as Rorona, and you basically inherit an alchemy shop, Atelier, let's say, and you have to basically keep it in business. The government's going to shut you down if you can't prove that you're providing a good service to the community, so you take on jobs. There's the infamous Atelier time limit. I didn't find it too cumbersome myself. I never ran out of time, so I don't know how common that is. I've heard that it gets harder in some of the later entries, so maybe Rorona is just a little bit of an easier time limit. I think it's a great starting point to the series. The PlayStation 2 entries, while interesting, never really grabbed me the way Rorona did. There's something about just the presentation of the world. Graphics are really charming and fun. And I don't hear people talk about the music in the Atelier games enough. It's really good. It's very strange in some cases, but strange in a very cool way. It's very, very interesting music, and it needs more attention paid to it. Please, thank you. Number 11, Tales of Symphonia. So Tales of Symphonia is back in the zeitgeist because it's coming to modern platforms in a sort of remastered edition. But if you don't have a GameCube, you don't have a PlayStation 3, you don't have one of these modern newfangled game machines, you can grab it on Steam, and it's a fantastic game. Tales of Symphonia is a landmark entry in the Tales of franchise. It's beloved for a reason, so if you haven't tried it and you're interested in getting into the Tales of series, and you're not a crazy person like me, and you don't want to start back with Tales of Phantasia and work your way one by one, chronologically, I don't blame you, because that is a crazy thing to do, then I think Tales of Symphonia is a great jumping on point. So if you are in the market for a fun action JRPG, Tales of Symphonia, man, all the way, all the way. I notice I didn't say anything about the music because Sakuraba, not a fan of him. And as a bonus, when you finish Tales of Symphonia, most of the modern Tales of games are also on Steam. So you have a lot more to look forward to. So there you go. Number 10, SaGa Frontier Remastered. Oh boy, the SaGa series is a bit of an acquired taste. Coming from the JRPG background that I did, it did not click with me when I was a kid. It was one of the first games I rented. Yeah, it was definitely one of the first games I rented on PlayStation. And I was confused, a little off-put, and confused again. And I guess just confused is how I would put it. I didn't understand this broken up story across all these different characters. They didn't seem to really have much to do with each other. The graphics were, how do I say it? They felt a little muddy. I couldn't really tell what was going on, where I was supposed to go, what I was supposed to do. Having not had any real experience with the SaGa games before Frontier, I came into it expecting a very standard Final Fantasy-esque JRPG experience. You cannot go into the SaGa series expecting a standard JRPG experience. You will be disappointed or, like me, confused. SaGa, as a series, experiments with esoteric gameplay concepts, unusual storytelling devices. If Final Fantasy is the rock and roll, SaGa is the jazz, okay? It's experimental, it's weird. It can be a great time if you go in expecting an experimental, weird, kooky game. You'll probably really enjoy yourself. If you go into a SaGa game like SaGa Frontier with the right expectations, you're much more likely to have a good time with it. Read into it a little bit, watch part of a playthrough on YouTube, see if it's up your alley. If it is, fantastic. The remastered version with the additional playable character that wasn't there in the PlayStation version is on Steam for you right now. Number 9, Grandia HD. Now I'm kind of cheating here. Grandia and Grandia 2 HD are both available on Steam, and they're both fantastic games. Look, Game Arts, the creators of Grandia, were also the creators of the Lunar series, which I just have so many fond memories of. When I heard that they were making this new game called Grandia, I was super excited. When I found out it was only going to be on the Saturn, I was super sad, but it eventually did come to the PlayStation, and I was super happy then. So you can see the roller coaster that my emotions went on. It is a classic young kid goes out into the world and has an adventure sort of game, which is really what Game Arts specializes in. The battle system is pretty unique, especially for the time. Everybody lined up along the bottom on an action meter, giving you the ability to delay or stun the enemies out of actually taking an action, and they can do the same to you, of course. The music is beautiful. The graphics are... I mean, say what you will about the HDification of some of these PlayStation games. They smooth out the textures, and that's not always the most beautiful thing to look at because they were designed to be sort of blurry and viewed through a tube TV. But given the choice between not being able to play Grandia and being able to play Grandia, we're in pretty good shape. Check out Grandia if you are interested at all in a sort of classic PlayStation era JRPG experience, for sure. Number 8. Phantasy Star 4. I'm cheating again here because I actually want to include the entire Sega Genesis Phantasy Star collection as my number 8. And I guess it's not really cheating, it's my video. I guess I can do what I want, right? I swear, if any of you rat on me to the YouTube, please. Whew. So yes, Phantasy Star 2, 3, and 4 are all available on Steam. And for me, especially Phantasy Star 2 and 4, really were childhood-defining games. Even as a younger kid, I sort of understood that the Sega Genesis was not the JRPG platform. I don't think I would have even called them JRPGs back then. I don't think I had that in my vocab. But yeah, Super Nintendo was where all of the JRPGs were. Sega was, you know, some pretty fun platformers. Sonic the Hedgehog, obviously, a big deal. I don't know if you heard of him. But JRPGs, no, not so much. Now, I loved Shining Force, of course. Spoiler warning. It might be coming up. But that was really a little bit of a different style of game. That was a tactical sort of experience. So I knew enough, even as a young kid, that this is a different genre. JRPGs, not really on the Sega. No, there are JRPGs on the Sega Genesis, and at least 2 of the best of them are Phantasy Star 2 and 4. Phantasy Star 3 kind of has a bad reputation. I personally have not played it yet. I own it, have not played it yet. That sounds familiar. Stack of shame. But I can vouch for Phantasy Star 2 and 4. Great music, such an interesting story presentation for the time. The story is told through these like manga or comic book style scenes pop up on the screen. No Super Nintendo game, to my knowledge, was doing anything like that. So it was a very, very neat way of telling the story, which I was there for anyway. Phantasy Star 4, by far, is the best. I don't think too many people will dispute that in terms of story, in terms of graphics, gameplay. Everything Phantasy Star 4 is just a very refined 16-bit JRPG experience. The fact that you can pick up Phantasy Star games on Steam is crazy, and we're very lucky that that is the case. Check out Phantasy Star. Number 7, Shining Force. And once again, I'm including Shining Force 1 and 2 in this. The Shining Force games I've talked about on this channel before. They are just a delight. They're colorful, they have great music, especially Shining Force 2. I don't know if you've heard the town music in Shining Force 2. It's like, if there was like a top 25 list of best JRPG music tracks, I think that most people would find a place for the town theme of Shining Force 2 somewhere on that list. The way battles play out in this sort of, initially top down, and then when the combat starts, you get this dynamic over-the-shoulder view. Not the sort of thing that you saw that often in 16-bit games. They were tactical role-playing masterpieces, and they're on basically every modern platform. We're really lucky that some companies, in particular Sega, have been doing such a good job of preserving their classic games. If only every company treated their back catalog like Sega does. Nintendo. Sorry, I had a Nintendo in my throat. Number 6, The Collection of SaGa, Final Fantasy Legend. So the same SaGa disclaimer needs to get stuck onto this as I stuck onto SaGa Frontier. These are the earliest games in the SaGa series, released over here as Final Fantasy Legend 1, 2, and 3. They are strange, they are not super story-focused, but they do have really interesting and engaging gameplay ideas. From choosing different races or creatures to play as with different abilities, even different ways of playing and advancing. Honestly, I was surprised when they announced this. I had hoped for a physical, of course. We didn't get that. That's okay. Not everything's going to come out on a little card for me. But if you have a modern console, or if you have a computer that can run Steam, you too can pick up all 3 of the original SaGa games. Why not do it today? I act like I'm really pitching these things. I don't get any money if you buy them. It doesn't actually matter to me if you buy them. I don't want to say that. I want you to enjoy yourselves. Basically, I'm making this video so that you'll find potentially some classic experience, especially if you're younger and you didn't grow up with these games, but you're curious to see kind of the progression of JRPGs from the olden days to today. There's just so many games now on Steam that make that really easy for you to do, and I just think that's cool. Number 5, Ys. Yes, I'm going to go ahead and just stop pretending like I care. The entire Ys series is my number 5 pick for classic JRPGs on Steam. You can get every Ys game ever released in North America on Steam right now. It's pretty incredible. The only exception, of course, being Ys 5, which never found a home over here officially. I played the ROM, don't tell anyone, and I didn't like it. It was pretty bad. It was a pretty bad game, but playing through all of the remakes of the original 4 Ys games, and then playing through 6, 7, 8, and 9, just a phenomenal series. I cannot recommend Ys enough if you like action RPGs. The action is consistently top-notch. The music, I could go on and on and on about the Ys music, or really Falcom as a company, the music that they produce is just so butt-rocking good. Like, it just takes your butt and it just rocks it so hard. And you might even be like, hey, can you lay off on my butt? It's been rocked enough. And they say, no, it hasn't been rocked enough. We'll tell you when it's been rocked enough. It's very good music is what I'm trying to get at. I think my favorite is Ys 8. Ys 9 is very, very good, and it's a close second. But Ys 8 just was so phenomenal, and just viewing it as I did, having played through all the games in order, in release order, just seeing the culmination of this team's work on developing this series over so many years. It's one of the oldest JRPG series out there. It is so old, and it's still going strong, and I couldn't be happier. I believe we're supposed to hear something about Ys 10 pretty soon, unless they're going to remake 5, which honestly would be okay, because we need to see 5 over here in some official capacity, preferably in a form that doesn't suck. That'd be good. If you like action role-playing games at all, please check out the Ys games. I, of course, am the person who starts every series that I can from the very beginning and plays through them in release order. Totally understand if you don't want to do that. If you want to just jump on board with Ys 8, it's a great place to start, and it's a phenomenal game. But if you're interested in the history, check them out. Like I said, they're all there. Number 4, Final Fantasy IV. Final Fantasy IV was a life-changing game for me. Maybe that sounds a little grandiose, and it is, but Final Fantasy IV was really the first JRPG that I really played and was old enough to understand. I know that I played Dragon Quest as a very little kid when I could barely read, and I know that I played a little bit of Final Fantasy I on the NES. And I don't remember having super strong feelings about either of them. I probably liked Dragon Quest more because it was the one I owned, and it was the one I played the most. I could never figure out what to do or where to go. Like I said, I was really young. Final Fantasy II on the Super Nintendo 4, you know, just opened my eyes to this genre of game. And it did so at a time when it was actually defining the genre for an entire new generation. Games hadn't really been like Final Fantasy IV, with its emphasis on story and an enormous cast of characters and a beautiful musical score. Music that was, set to the scene, that was there not just to sit in the background and keep it from feeling weirdly quiet, but to add emotion to what's happening on the screen. Rose's theme when she comes to visit Cecil in the middle of the night. It's just Rydia. Rydia. The battles introducing active time was one of the most important things that it did for the series as a whole, kind of establishing how battles would play out, how the gameplay portion of the game would play. Is Final Fantasy IV the best Final Fantasy? No. No. Not by a long shot, really. And you're free to disagree with me, of course. But I think Final Fantasy IV set the trend. I would not be doing this video right now if not for Final Fantasy IV. I don't think that that's hyperbole. I think it did set me on a course to fall in love with this genre of game. And if I had missed that somehow, I don't think that any of these hundreds of fantastic JRPG experiences that I've had, I don't think I would have had them. So I'm very grateful to Final Fantasy IV. And you can check it out on Steam. They have the original Final Fantasy IV, and they have the 3D remake that was originally released on the Nintendo DS. I think they're both great. The 3D remake adds voice acting. It's super butt hard, like the original Final Fantasy IV was in Japan. So if you're interested in a challenge and you don't mind Nintendo DS era 3D graphics, then I recommend the 3D remake. Otherwise, you can't go wrong with the classic Final Fantasy IV. Editing Brandon here. It's come to my attention that I was mistaken. The version of Final Fantasy IV on Steam is the Final Fantasy IV Pixel Remaster. So keep that in mind. I'm sure it's fine, but it's not the original. Number 3, Chrono Trigger. I don't know how much you know about my JRPG history. If you watched all the videos on this channel, you know quite a bit. You've heard me talk about Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger is probably the most important game to me. Obviously, it's a great game and it's beloved by so many millions of JRPG fans. So it's not just me, but it came out during a time in my life when I really needed a game like that. Things at home weren't great, school was rough, bullies were bullying, but Chrono Trigger was comfortable, it was exciting, it was so much fun. I fell in love with the graphics, I absolutely fell in love with the music. Yasunori Mitsuda remains one of my favorite musicians. If I listed, my favorite bands, Yasunori Mitsuda would be near the top of my list of just favorite musicians that make music. I just love it. It sort of represents an evolutionary dead end in some ways for JRPGs. The way it did away with random battles. All of the battles take place right there on the screen, where your characters are all visible at all times, which means that the developers couldn't rely on just random battles to make the game challenging, and it meant that they had to handcraft every single battle encounter that happens in the game. I don't think that that's really been done since then. That much effort put into curating an experience like Chrono Trigger did. When Chrono Trigger was released on Steam initially a few years ago, there were a lot of problems with it, and I don't deny that at all. I believe most, if not all, of those issues have been fixed. So you should be good to go playing Chrono Trigger on Steam today. It also includes some of the bonus material from the DS remake of Chrono Trigger, which is also fantastic. Adds in a few new canon pieces to the story, connects it a little more tightly to Chrono Cross. Especially if you don't have a Nintendo DS, this might actually be considered the definitive Chrono Trigger version right now. The Super Nintendo version, of course, will always have a special place in my heart. It's one of the maybe 3 or 4 video games that I never got rid. I still have these games from my childhood. Xenogears is another, Chrono Cross is another. They're games that even when I wasn't collecting video games, they were games that I just couldn't imagine parting with. So, if you haven't played Chrono Trigger by some chance, and you stumbled upon this video and you've made it, I don't know, 35 minutes or whatever it is into a video about JRPGs on Steam, please check out Chrono Trigger. If you take nothing else away from this, check out Chrono Trigger. Number 2, Persona 4 Golden. A lot has been said about Persona 4, so I'll try to keep this one brief. I think I probably really overdid it, waxing poetic about Chrono Trigger, so Persona 4 Golden is just amazing. It is the Persona formula perfected. Persona 5 would come along and really up the presentation in some pretty remarkable ways, but the basic gameplay and format is all perfected in Persona 4, and it's just incredible. It's so long. It's such a long game, but you don't ever feel like things are tedious or boring. There are just so many different things to do. You might be crawling through a dungeon, fighting a bunch of battles 1 minute. The next minute, you're going to class, having to answer random trivia questions. The next minute, you're free to roam around town. You can hang out with your friends. You can go to stores. Variety is the spice of life, and it's what makes the Persona games so enticing. So much to do, and it's so cool, fun, and funny, heartwarming. At times, it can be really serious. At its core, it's just such a fun game. Check out Persona 4 Golden. Also, coming soon, I'm pretty sure, Persona 3 is also going to be hitting Steam. Very similar to 4. 4 refines a few things in Persona 3, smooths off a few of the rough edges, but Persona 3 Portable is still highly playable and highly recommended. We've made it to number 1. My number 1 classic JRPG available on Steam, and it is Trails in the Sky. Come on. You had to have known I wasn't going to do a list like this and not plug the Trails series. Who do you think I am? Who do you take me for? Some kind of poser? Some kind of fraud? Bracers for life, baby. Yes, Trails in the Sky. The original Trails in the Sky trilogy, all available on Steam. The best ways to play those games. I played Trails 1 and 2 on PlayStation Vita. Well, they're the PSP versions, but backwards compatibility allowed me to play them on Vita. I was immediately in love with the series. I actually had Trails in the Sky on my Vita for years before I ever picked it up. I think I found it on sale one time on the PlayStation Store, downloaded it, and was like, it looks like a JRPG, so I'll play it one of these days. The generic sounding title, though, it just did not seem exciting or enticing in any way. If you feel the same way, let me assure you, the Trails series is amazing. It does a brilliant job of telling this epically grand story across so many games. And it all starts here with Trails in the Sky. You're introduced to this world, which up until very recently has been sort of your typical medieval-ish society. But there's been this revolution in technology, basically a sort of magic technology hybrid sort of deal. So as the games progress, you see, technology continue to advance at a rate far faster than happened in the real world, for sure. So it has this nice mix of traditional fantasy elements with a little bit of modern storytelling and some sort of futuristic sci-fi stuff mixed in too. It's charming as all heck. The main character in the Trails in the Sky trilogy is Estelle, and she is just a little firecracker. I love Estelle. She is one of my all-time favorite JRPG protagonists. She's goofy, she's hilarious, she's really driven. It's just so cool to see a character like that and to see representation for a female main character in a JRPG, because, I mean, let's be frank, there aren't that many, right? Final Fantasy VI, I would say, split between Terra and Celeste, and, I mean, Final Fantasy 13, and nobody likes lightning, so I don't know if we even want to count that. But there just aren't a ton, right? There's just not a ton of female main characters, and to have one like Estelle, who's so freaking cool, it's just a big win in my book. The battles are highly tactical, right? Like, you can move around freely on the battlefield, but also it's turn-based, and it incorporates things like skill points, a magic system, screen-filling super attacks. It's got basically everything. And it's really cool, having played all the games in order, more or less, seeing how it evolves piece by piece, bit by bit, over the course of this long-running series. From what I understand, the latest games in the series have sort of done a new battle system, or maybe given you the option to choose a new battle system. So I'm curious to see what they're doing there. It's going to be probably a few years before we get the latest entries brought over. They're still, making up for what we missed out on with the Zero and Azure duology, which are also very good, by the way, and also on Steam. So if you are a Steam-only JRPG lover, you have access to the entire Trails series as it exists today. And it seems like they are going to continue bringing all of the new Trails games over to America as they release them on consoles. Well, actually, Azure isn't out yet. Azure comes out in like 4 months. But it will be. You can pre-order it, I'm sure. So get on it. I started this channel to get people to play the Trails games because I want someone to talk about the Trails games with. Can we talk about Trails? Can you find me on Twitter or something and talk about Trails with me? I love Trails. I love Trails. Anyway, that's it. That's my top 15 classic JRPGs available on Steam. So if you are not a console hoarder, you are not a physical video game collector, you've got options. You can play some of these classic games from my childhood, maybe from yours, certainly from mine. And you can play them in some cases with modern conveniences added, so that's pretty cool too. Are there any that I missed? I'm sure there must be. Please let me know down in the comments any classic JRPGs that you can buy on Steam that I may have overlooked. When I say classic, I guess I'm meaning PS3 and earlier. If it's PS4, since it's still technically playable on a PS5, I don't know if I consider that classic just yet. Give it another 5 years. Ugh. But yeah, PS3 and older, I would love to hear if there's any games that I missed. I ask you once again, please like the video. If you haven't, please subscribe so I know you're out there. I would really appreciate it. And until next time, bye.